So what we're going to try to help these small businesses do is give them guidance on what to go do, because they should be listening to this episode. You should be trying to grow your international because it is a big market. And if you do it right, it can be a huge portion of your business. And we have customers that it's 30, 40% of their business. And, that's on the extreme high side. But imagine if you can even get it to 3 or 5%, like that can be extremely impactful. Usually higher revenue orders too for international. So yes, now small business, I want to go international. So what's the solution here, Aaron? How do we do this? All right, welcome to another episode of the Decoding Cross-Border Ecommerce podcast. We're your hosts. We have Aaron Bezzant here with myself, Clint Reid, and excited to, in our first episode, we talked about the objective that you're trying to do when picking international shipping carrier. We talked about fees, the costs. Anyway, go listen to that episode. It was great.
Yeah, and I think just to recap, cost, speed, and choice.
Yeah, you know
right?
what? Thank you.
Yes. Give your customers at checkout. They're cost sensitive, they're speed sensitive, and give them a choice between the two. That's how, and offering those services at checkout. And now you got to pick those partners you're going to work with to be able to provide that.
So today we really want to talk to you small business owners out there. I feel your pain. You're a
small business owner.
Okay, so I have two businesses. This is the big. Zonos is a behemoth. It feels like it's a lot of work, a lot going on there. I have another business that's a lot of work. That's not a big business, I would say, which is an online retailer. We sell a lot of different stuff both on Amazon and direct to consumer on our website.
And how many employees do you have working there?
Oh, about half of them.
Yeah, that didn't even feel like a joke.
It didn't feel like a joke.
No, but it was a joke.
Yeah, it was.
Especially,
how many employees?
Especially if any of your current employees.
About half of them are working.
Yeah.
It's a small business joke. Okay. So let's maybe kick this off talking about the challenges that a small business has when they need to pick an international shipping provider. Because there's it's not so easy. I mean, you're new to the game. You don't know, like me talking to my family about this stuff, like they don't know. They can barely do the domestic, it feels like, right? So we're learning as we go. We bought this business, 6 months ago. And so what are some of these challenges you think that are, and we can just go back and forth on them because I can talk to them all day.
So just to retouch on, we kind of put out there that, hey, there's the categories. There's postal services. There's your express services, UPS and FedEx and DHL. And then there's some more advanced options that usually require volume. And that's where the problem comes in with SMBs is they don't have the volume yet. So they need to be able to grow their business. But in order to grow their business, they know their customers are cost sensitive. And if they can't convert, they can't grow their business. And so they're kind of in this conundrum of how do I go out and be strategic about giving my customers the most value possible, so that way I can grow my business to be able to tap into some of the more advanced options out there.
The chicken or egg conundrum.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, don't discount the value you can bring as a brand and with customer service and everything else. Like international shoppers will pay for peace of mind, reliability. Like maybe not all of them, but you can go after the ones, even if you don't have great rates. Just like this episode is not to tell you don't ship internationally if you do not have great shipping rates.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Still give them an option to buy from you.
Yes.
No matter what. But now let's figure out how to refine
I'm shocked.
And get the best options out there.
I'm shocked at how much people will pay for international shipping. It's amazing. Now, but their higher shipping costs do limit your growth. Mm-hmm. And it is one of the biggest factors when somebody gets to checkout and they see how much the shipping is, especially if you don't give them a lot of options, which we talked about in the first part of this series. It's going to hurt your conversion.
And another thing you touched on that's a struggle for small business owners is how many hats do you wear?
Well, this is one hat. I flipped it around for this episode. So it would look like, though we're recording this on the same day, it would look like, okay, how many hats? Lots of hats. You're doing, you're sourcing, right? So we're ordering stuff that's coming in from China. We are trying to get products listed on tons of different channels out there for, Amazon, eBay, Mercari, doesn't matter, Walmart Marketplace. And then you have an inventory management system. You're dealing with all these racking and quality control. So, and this is with a small team, right? Half of which are working. No, they're all working. But yes, it's overwhelming. And so when you all of a sudden talk about international, you see the dollar signs and you're excited, but you're overwhelmed.
Yeah. Well, and then you've still got a lot of problems that you're always trying to sort out and take care of with your domestic business, right? And you're trying to refine that. And then international, you got to have a whole nother strategy on top of it, which there's a lot of overlap there, let's be honest. But there's just a lot to juggle. And so that's just another struggle of small businesses. You don't really have someone dedicated to growing your international markets.
Right.
It's kind of a side project that you want to get figured out. And sometimes you can be distracted from putting the effort in needed. So keeping it simple and getting an effective solution out there, hopefully we can give a message of there's hope and there's ways to do this without eating up gobs and gobs of your time.
And it's important to do it. I know that you do have a lot of things going on. So what we're going to try to help these small businesses do is give them guidance on what to go do, because they should be listening to this episode. You should be trying to grow your international because it is a big market. And if you do it right, it can be a huge portion of your business. And we have customers that it's 30, 40% of their business. And that's on the extreme high side. But imagine if you can even get it to 3 or 5%, like that can be extremely impactful. Usually higher revenue orders too for international. So yes, now small business, I want to go international. So what's the solution here, Aaron? How do we do this?
Great question. I think the first thing to do is let's look at the landscape of what's out there.
Okay.
We mentioned there's postal options, and then there's your express carriers, right? There's some other options out there that are really good that we're gonna have to talk in the next episode and take a deeper dive that maybe aren't accessible for the really small shippers. So let's first look at the post and what options they bring.
Like a post, like United States Postal Service, Australia Post.
Yep. Post offices around the world.
Okay.
Everybody's got one on their street corner. You don't have to go and have a bunch of buying power to negotiate great rates. They have a fit still in the e-commerce world, but they are limited in scope to where they're good. So I would say definitely look at those. And if you have, smaller, lightweight packages, they're phenomenal. And then, and then you look at their service. They've had some hiccups and things over the past, but they're all really striving to improve their service levels.
And they have they have options. Just
absolutely.
A single post isn't a single option at your checkout. You have multiple different options, ranging from actually really fast, expensive, to medium fast. I would say medium fast is 4 to 5 days, which is kind of expensive. Not too bad though. I would frame it that way. And then you have the like with the United States Postal Service, a first class mail option, or these postal options that are just snail mail. Yeah, that's the snail mail options in the world. And some customers are willing to wait, right? Especially if it's a low value order.
Yep. And that kind of goes back to give them if you've got a really cheap option, message how long they're going to have to wait. Don't make that a surprise. So message the transit time expectations and the lower cost, and those that have the time to wait are going to pick it. But then you can still, even with the post, offer expedited options, which will get there faster, but and those that need it fast are willing to pay a little more for those.
So here's the thing, Aaron. I want to ship my packages, duties and taxes paid, even as a small shipper, because I'm worried about, my family business. I am worried about it getting rejected at customs. Like I can't afford that. I can't return this stuff back. But post traditionally have not had this option. So what are my options here?
We have a whole deep dive episode on that too.
Go listen to that podcast. The answer is there are options, but at least give me your 30-second overview of what you can do.
Okay, so
and how much it covers too. Well, actually, we'll go through some scenarios, different scenarios, but just what can you do with the post?
Okay,
like how creative can you get?
Cool thing is, over the last 5 or 6 years, the way duty and tax revenue is moving internationally has evolved. So there's many countries where you as a retailer can actually send the tax revenue on lower value shipments directly to that country. Australia kind of kicked it all off with everyone, and then New Zealand, the EU, UK, etc. So if you have lower value shipments, then that's
lower value under
150 euro going into EU, 135 British pounds, which honestly fits a good chunk of the profiles that are out there for most e-commerce retailers. So you can create that DDP experience on your own and still leverage a postal solution that maybe doesn't have the mechanisms in place to bill those duty and taxes back to you like a traditional DDP would. And then at Zonos, we also help our customers into a few other markets with a more traditional DDP offering, like into Canada. So if you take
we're doing this with posts. That's important too.
Regular posts.
Yeah, we're not saying we're going to move this through a commercial stream. We're saying through the postal stream, we're going to be able to give
you
that
can go
DDP experience.
Normal postal shipment, drop it off at your local post office, and you can still collect the duty and tax at checkout and create that DDP experience.
Boom. I like it.
And honestly, if you wrap up all those, kind of looking at the numbers, the coverage of all of that is still 80% plus of your shipments can be DDP.
Okay. So post is a good option.
Yep.
What else is out there?
Okay, so now back to the second most familiar is, let's call it the big three globally, which is FedEx, UPS, and DHL. There are some others that might sweep into that, but those are the big three. But going direct with them can be problematic to get the rates you need. They're really, really high quality services, but they're really expensive. And then as an SMB, you might have a hard time negotiating the rates that you want. So what's the solution, Clint?
Well, there's different solutions out there. Resellers is a large category, right? You have traditional resellers of one of the big three, right? So internationally, in Express with DHL, right? World Options, right? There's these traditional resellers that are just literally reselling the Express services just directly.
Can we talk about why that works for the big Express carriers?
Yeah,
because I think the most important thing here is for them to go to every little business isn't cost effective for the big Express carriers, and then they have to schedule they have to arrange and maintain and work with those accounts one by one. It's difficult for those Express carriers to have the manpower to manage that. So what they do is they partner with other companies that can resell their rates, and those companies aggregate volume across many shippers. And so they can drive the cost down, get better rates, and resell to you as a small business. They can make their little margin on it, but in the end, you get better rates than you could ever get on your own.
And the Express carriers don't have risk of collecting the money. There's actually a lot lower. It's a lot lower cost for them, not just with sales reps. Even though, yes, they're giving away a volume discount to a third party. And these direct resellers aren't the only ones that resell.
Nope.
Who else is out there that does this?
You know what? If you're working with a 3PL, they're reselling rates often, right?
Right.
So the 3PL will aggregate their volume across their warehouses and their network and be able to pass on savings to you as a shipper. Another thing is if you're shipping through a ShipStation or a Shippo or really any other shipping platform that you use, almost all of them are giving an option of discounted rates that you can leverage. So they're in the reselling game too. And then the other thing is you've even got Shopify and others that are in this game as your platform where you can just fulfill your orders through their portal and access discounted rates. There's a lot of resellers out there that you can tap into.
Okay, so I'm trying to make a decision. And I'm online, I'm looking at it, and I see these up to 85% off or something like that. Like, what actually is the expectation here of a discount? Okay, so first off, I think it's important to note that with the posts, you're not getting a discount. It is the discounted rate. Like, you are getting a lower cost rate, a different type service through the posts. International shoppers love posts typically, but it's usually higher cost. And depending on the discount you're going to get from an Express carrier. So what is a reasonable discount then from an Express carrier? For this small market, and explain what it means.
Yeah. So let's say you're going to see a lot of things that say, 70 plus, 70 whatever percent discount up to, or even into the 80 plus percent discount. That's great. That's wonderful, but I wouldn't buy based on that number that they're telling you. Discounts are tricky. There's a minimum package charge that is really important. Well, what's that negotiated to, right? There's all these complicated fees and things you can look at, but here's the most simple way to do it. What does your typical package look like? Let's just start there. and then get a rate on that, right? Like, oh, I'm typically selling really, really small, lightweight items. Well, guess what? That minimum package charge is going to be the most important thing. It doesn't matter if you have a 100% discount. If that minimum package charge is expensive, it could still be more expensive than someone that has a 75% discount. So know your package and kind of turn around and get some rates and see which one's going to be the best for your customers. Know where your customers are. Get some sample rates for your typical orders going to the typical countries and see how they stack up. That's probably the easiest way to analyze that, because there's a lot of noise, marketing noise about up to 80+% discounts and those types of things, which could potentially be meaningful or completely meaningless for your business.
Depending on your business. Totally agree. And so, with our small business, we are doing both direct, where we work with an express carrier directly. And then we also, at times, are choosing the shipping platform discount for the shipping platform we're using. So there isn't you can do all the things, unless you're using a 3PL, they'll probably set it aside. But you can work direct, and you can work with a shipping platform that's reselling rates too. And you can kind of, it gives you choices.
Mm-hmm. Can I bring up another fatal mistake that often happens to with small businesses? Analysis paralysis, right? So they get so worried about having the perfect solution out of the gate that sometimes they don't put in any solution for a long time. Try to pick something good and get it out there, because you're going to learn a lot about what your customers want and need, and you can always improve and adjust that over time. But you're going to, if you don't offer a solution at all, you're not going to get any sales. At least get something out there. Start with the post if they make sense. Start with some, if you're using a shipping software that's offering discount rates, start there. Start with something, and then you can always improve.
Put in a little bit of that work, and you'll get the. There's some dividends for doing that.
Yep.
Now, maybe we can go through some scenarios now.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
I'd like to. Because I think it's helpful to see actual examples and where I fit. Okay, Aaron, 2 to 3 packages a month, like super, super small business. My average value is like $50, let's say. And obviously it's low value, so it's probably low weight, so maybe under 2 pounds. What is, but domestically, I'm probably doing 100 domestically, right? So 2 to 3 a month internationally, 100 domestically. What would be a good option for a provider like that?
Post. Yeah, that fits the profile of a postal service really well. And you could even just go strictly postal services, offer their express services along with their standard services, and that could be a great way to get started.
Especially if you're in the U.S. going to Canada and you're low value, man, you cannot beat United States Postal Service to Canada because of that postal stream benefits, which if you go listen to our episode on the post, you'll understand how beneficial that can be. All right. Let's say same size business, maybe 2 to 3 a month, but I'm still doing, 100 domestically or so, but my weight's different and my value's different. Say my average order value is $150 to $200 or something, and my weight is at least 5 pounds, maybe 10 pounds plus. What should I be doing here?
That's where the resellers come in. So working with, whether it be your shipping platform or your 3PL, or if you want to go find a reseller on your own directly, that's where those come into play and would be a really good fit for your business. And then if you have some orders that are still lightweight, throw the post in there too.
So hold on. Why are you dismissing the post on the heavier weight stuff? Because you're saying, lightweight. Yeah, go back to post. Like, what does that have to do with anything?
Well, if every single order you have is exactly the same product, then it's easy to, you can pick the type of service you want. But many e-commerce retailers might have a mix of larger orders and
why wouldn't you ship a larger order with a post?
They can get more expensive.
Yes. I think that's the there's this threshold around, I don't know, anywhere from 3 to 5 pounds or something, where the savings can shift because not because the published rates are both still very, expensive. But when you can get a large discount, that minimum charge, right? Like that larger discount starts kicking in, which is why working with a reseller, a lot of times you're going to actually get a better shipping rate with a better service and express carrier in the heavier weights.
Yeah, and there's no harm. In fact, I would recommend, hey, if you've got orders that the postal services are cheaper and you've got orders where the resellers are better, put them both in your checkout. Right? Give the customers the option between the two of them.
Now, let's say now I'm doing more than this. I'm maybe 20 a month internationally, maybe 1,000 domestically. Still, that's a small business. And let's go through both scenarios again. My AOV is 50 and I'm under 2 pounds.
Yeah. Posts are still at play. I would pay close attention to them. Resellers are definitely still at play, but this might be someone that's growing their business using a reseller. You need to start paying attention and talking directly with the carriers.
Right.
And you know what? You might find that your reseller is still going to get you better rates. You just go with whoever's going to get you the best rates, right? But start talking directly with the carriers and building those relationships. And then, make the decisions on how those numbers play out. And the other cool thing about this is your domestic volume is becoming relevant. You can leverage that to help you get better international discounts. So this is, UPS and FedEx, for example, here in the US, this is where I have some experience. It's like, hey, they want your domestic volume. And in order to get that, they're also willing to bring along some good discounts on the international. So definitely start that. You definitely need to be talking directly to the carriers.
If you're under 2 pounds, and I'm getting some volume here, in our first episode of this series, we talked about consolidators. Are they a play for this group?
They can be. So consolidators, some of them even have domestic services that you could leverage your domestic volume to be able to then get some discounted rates internationally for. So like your UPS has a version of that, UPS Economy. So you could be working with your UPS rep. Not just you don't have to have just the express services. You can actually bring in the some of their what we call consolidator services, but it's a lower cost solution. Maybe a little. But
they already
slower.
know how to do the first mile pickup. That's that's the benefit they have.
Exactly. And FedEx has their cross-border solution as well. FedEx is also trying to get really aggressive in the international game with their FICP product. And so you start working directly with them, and you can kind of, and the best thing is work with the reps and make them your friend and your advocate. And they want to win your business.
But a consolidator that has to do the pickup themselves or arrange it themselves, you're probably not at the volume yet until you're getting to, 10 to 15 a day, or you can consolidate enough in a week, right, to slow things down. We'll talk about that more in the mid-market enterprise episode coming up, when you can start using these consolidators and who to use.
Yeah. That the first mile pickup is really expensive if you don't have volume.
Yep.
And that's where the beauty of leveraging your domestic volume, if it can be with the same partner that's doing that pickup, can help you get the better rates on the international.
So I was kind of that we were talking about that bigger small business, right? When I say bigger, 1,000 domestically a month, 20 to 30 international a month. But now let's do it in that same group. My AOV is higher though. It's $150 and I'm doing 5+ pounds. The consolidators are probably, especially at this size, like of business, you're probably not doing much of that. Maybe FedEx FICP, right? Or Worldwide Economy. I think maybe you might have some good options. So, but how does it change now and who I'm going out there and looking for and talking to?
I think your resellers are still in play because they're still reselling the same services that you've been using with
the express stuff,
the heavier stuff. Yeah. And then negotiating directly with the express carriers because these are high revenue shipments for them and they're willing to play ball. So they measure, I'm sure they track how many packages you're shipping, but Clint, you've been on the sales side of the aisle for a couple of these companies. What do they actually watch? When they look at an account, what number are they looking at?
Revenue.
Yeah. And so if you have bigger packages.
The sales reps are looking at revenue. The corporate's looking at margins a little bit, but yes.
Oh, sure. But it's all about the money. It's not about the count of packages. And so if you have large packages, lots of revenue, then they're going to pay attention to you.
Yeah. And two, when you have higher value stuff, you're looking for a more reliable service. We talked about how reliable the express carriers are. You're going to get just a better service, possibly at a more competitive rate than you could with a post. It's not that post maybe your post in your country is going to be decent in some of these ranges, but for the most part, as it gets heavier and heavier, you're basically in the express game and you're choosing between resellers, either on the platform or direct, or working directly with a carrier because they have margin. they can negotiate those rates. All right. So what tips do you have for the small business listeners out there listening to the podcast today? Oh, wait, before we get to the tips, I want to talk about a shipment I had. So, and what would you do? We gave you examples. Let me give you this real example. Okay. So, when we bought this business, we have two different websites. And we have a new website, or a website that we haven't spent a lot of time on yet. And we had an international order going to Canada. It was $50 order, and it was DDU. I know, I hate to say it. I had not installed Zonos yet. That's up and coming. I was from small business. We had a lot to worry about, right?
Yep,
like we're worried about hats. I had a lot of other things I was worried about. And my son calls me up and he's like, "Hey, Dad, what should I do here? I have this shipment and FedEx or, DHL or UPS, the discount that's coming through here on my system is like, let's say $25 going to Canada. Maybe a little less than that." And then he said, and then the post office is $33. He's like, "Should I ship it FedEx?" What would you tell him?
Send it post.
Why?
Because
but it's cheaper for me to send it with one of the other carriers.
It's cheaper for you, but your customer is going to get hit with a lot more fees with those carriers than they will with the postal movement. In fact, especially going to Canada on a $50 order, there's a good chance there aren't going to be any duty and tax at all collected.
So it's probably going to be zero if it went post, which is what I told him. I said, send it post, because even though there should be duty and tax, there won't be. And if you send it with one of these express carriers, you're talking probably another $20 to $30 in fees for that person when it arrives. So we send it post.
But that's where, obviously Zonos, our business model, is helping people to surface those costs at checkout and not have the surprise at delivery. That's a huge part of what we do. So we know the game and know how to collect that and calculate that, hey, it's going to be very different for a UPS, DHL, FedEx than it would be for a post. And so it's, for a small business owner that doesn't have the experience you have making that decision. In fact, I would say a lot of shipping softwares and stuff out there are just looking at the shipping costs.
They're just looking at shipping costs,
everything else,
not the total cost,
which is a dangerous
super
approach to
unfortunate
take internationally.
Yeah. Okay. So what tips do you have then for these small businesses as we close out segment 3 of our 4-part series?
Keep it simple and get something started. Right. There's usually some options out there. Obviously, the postals, if that makes sense, put a post in there. And then you can get resold shipping rates really easily nowadays. They're everywhere. So tap into those two things. If they, maybe just post if you have only lightweight items, but just get started with something. And then as you start working with even those reseller reps and with the carrier reps, have a good relationship with them. You see a lot of, I'm trying to think of a nice word to. See a lot of people that take the approach.
What word are you going to use?
A very abrasive approach to the negotiating. The negotiating tactics of just beating people over the head and all. No. Look, everybody's human. Let's treat each other like humans. And you can win some advocates from these resellers and from these reps directly as you start negotiating with them directly. And guess what? They're going to give you all sorts of tips and consultation and insights that'll help you make better decisions. And then the other thing is give them good data, right? Like help them. For sure.
They help them help you, because they got to go back and make a case. And like I was talking about margins, corporate cares about margins. The rep cares about revenue. They want to win your business, but corporate cares about those margins. Mm-hmm. And without that data, the rep's going to go back and say, I want this negotiated, this negotiated, this negotiated. And without any backing to how's that going to impact our margins, you might not get it. So give that good data.
And the dynamics, I think, are easy to overlook here. That rep, if you make them your partner in negotiating against corporate to get you the best rates possible, you guys will work together on what data needs to be happening, how to tell the story to justify the lower rates. The other thing I'd say is when you are negotiating directly with the carriers, pay attention to the fees and things that make the most sense for you and your business, and don't bother negotiating something that has no relevance. If you're only selling small widgets, don't negotiate a large package surcharge discount because you're never going to get hit with it anyways. Focus on what's meaningful to you.
So, Aaron, you've done a lot of negotiating in your past life. You ran 2 distribution centers for a very, very large online retailer. And you had said something that I had never thought of, which is timing. Like, why does timing matter?
There's, okay, so I would say, what do you got here in the U.S.? You call it a duopoly, but it's kind of changing and evolving. It's a little more than that in the international world, but these carriers pay very close attention to each other in the market, and they kind of have, you notice them have some knee-jerk reactions to things. If they're flush or their capacity's full, they're not going to negotiate very much, right? And then
planes are full.
Planes are full. I mean, think of COVID.
Yep.
When all of a sudden e-commerce boomed, and then they weren't willing to negotiate much. And then there's times when it's the opposite. All of a sudden, they want to increase revenue for their shareholders or whatever it is, whatever the strategy is, and all of a sudden they're more than willing to negotiate. And they tend to bounce back and forth between these mindsets. And that's where being close with your rep and having a good relationship, they can tell you what the landscape's like internally and when a good time is to go ahead and go for some negotiated discounts, because then you're going to lock that in for multiple years into the future.
Hey, these kind of larger small businesses that have some domestic volume, so they are negotiating, they are doing these things. So I think those are some great tips. And looking forward to our final episode, which will be upcoming next, around enterprise. I think that it's a different landscape for them than it was for the small business, but appreciate the small business owners that listen to the enterprise episode, because that's where you're going next, right?
Absolutely. That was what I was going to say next. If you do it right as a small business,
you can get there.
You can get there.
All right. Hey, thanks for listening, everybody.